Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is.
Hello, good day, good afternoon, and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Starting another week of studies. Try to get at least 4, maybe we get 5. These days, if we get 4 this week, that'll be great. Friday's going to be difficult, especially with things that are going on. All right, let's start reading. We're doing Galatians chapter 5. We're picking up at 19. Let's just go a couple verses back. We've kind of gotten through the circumcision. We know what we're taught. We know about that. I love Galatians. We've read this chapter 3 times. Let's just read this into 6. This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revellings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have told you in times past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lust. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another. Brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, ye which are spiritual, restore such an one in the spirit of meekness, considering thyself, lest thou also be tempted. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. For if a man think himself to be something, when he is nothing, he deceiveth himself. But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself. And then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another. For every man shall bear his own burden. Let him that is taught in the word communicate unto him that teacheth in all good things. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap, if we faint not. As we have therefore opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially unto them who are of the household of faith. That's his postscript after there. And we're not going to finish this letter today. So we're not going to read all of chapter 6. We're going to go back and I want to talk about this because there's quite a bit to get through here. We've read quite a mouthful there. I don't want to get too far away from the thought at hand. The works of the flesh versus the fruit of the Spirit. And really, you could call it the fruit of the flesh. It's just that it's not thought of fruit in that sense because fruit is generally considered something good. I mean, don't misunderstand me on that front. Bad fruit is certainly something that's used. It's like, but he just calls it the works of the flesh. Now, it's not the works of the law. The works of the law is a different matter. The works of the flesh. Now, you can't be saved by the works of the law. But they do condemn you, but they are certainly not the things that we are talking about here. Though, in a sense, the law points at all these things, because that's what the law means, to point the way. At least, Torah. And I believe, unless it was the Greek version, don't quote me on that. I make mistakes in that regard for sure. Idolatry, witchcraft. Okay. But anyways, works of the flesh, because you could think about the parable of the vineyard from Isaiah 5, where he talks about the vineyard. And he looked at it should bring forth grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes, bad fruit from a bad seed. But this passage, Paul is not going down the route of comparing seeds. You can use my study on the seed of the serpent, where I use that symbolic motif, and I go through it, where I lay out both sides of that, because there's a good seed and a bad seed, a good fruit and a bad fruit. And it always has to do with sin. What was the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? It was all these things: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. Same thing, with the works of the flesh and the fruit of the Spirit. I remember when I was in junior college, that was after I was at the university, then I went to junior college. Anyways, but I remember a girl was trying to memorize the fruit of the Spirit. Probably not a difficult memorization. I'm sure many have. And I used to go the route of trying to memorize a lot of scriptures. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's why I write scripture music. I think it's a great way to get the word into your head, is by repetition. Focused memorization is of limited use. I did focused memorization for certain things, and some of it stuck, some of it didn't. The stuff that stuck was the stuff I used again, like the names of the books of the Bible. Because I returned to all those books, I know all the books of the Bible. I can recite them in order or out of order. Out of order would be difficult, obviously, but it'd be easier to do in order. But certainly you can ask me the name of a book, and I can tell you whether it's in the Bible or not. And and that's the point, is if you don't know the second Maccabees is not in the canonical Testament, it is in the Apocrypha. So there are things like that. But the works of the flesh versus the fruit of the Spirit. If you want to know, but what I'm saying is memorizing stuff has some utility, but it is of limited utility. The greatest utility, the greatest manifestation of this fruit of the Spirit is when you actually manifest it, love and joy and peace. Not that you memorize the ideas. Okay, I'm supposed to manifest these things. It's not supposed to be the fruit of study. It's the fruit of the Spirit, of walking in a spirit. In this, you know how you walk in that Spirit? Because you understand what that Spirit is. By knowing the Word and understanding it, and that understanding comes from Him. You have to get it from Him. You have to go to the Spirit. I can talk to people and try to explain it to them, but it won't go into their heads unless the Spirit opens their ears to it, to understanding it. Even if I try to explain it really good. I've gone through this. I've explained things beautifully that would convince others. But sometimes there's no convincing people because there's other forces at work. Blindness has happened to some people, even people who don't think they're blind, which is an amazing thing to see, to watch someone who thinks they see go about behaving like a blind person, metaphorically. I mean, they're not literally blind, but they have some blindness, something, and they don't see it, and it's obvious to others. But anyways, so when I think about, if you want the fruit of the Spirit, you have to familiarize yourself with the person of Jesus Christ. You need to meditate on his words. You got to listen to the words of the apostles of Jesus Christ. Then you should do investigation of the Old Testament to understand the basis on which they said all these things. I think understanding that foundation, because the Old Testament can be a weakness for people, because there's vulnerability there, because the revelation of the Old Testament is partial and primitive. And in many ways it is not. It is the place where faith goes to die very often, to tell you the truth. A lot of people, that's the part of the Bible that, and also questioning the New Testament. The people, we don't have a New Testament for 400 years. They always say this stuff. I got this comment from this guy talking about, we didn't have the New Testament. It's like, you mean the collected New Testament? You don't mean like the Paul's letter to the Thessalonians? Like, we have a copy of that goes way back. You don't have the original. It's like, what did the original? Was it vastly different? I've read the whole New Testament. I've studied it for years. And I'm telling you, like, as far as that, I don't know of any irreconcilable contradictions. And there's always contradictions. Like Jesus in the book of Luke. My friend Brian loves this one, right? In the beginning, he's like, hey, don't take a sword. Whatever you do, when you go out, don't take a sword, among other things, right? And then later on it says, hey, if you don't have a sword, go sell your garment and buy one. In the same gospel. And that's important. That's why he comes speaking in parables. You got to think. Life is not just this automated, robotic thing. You have to be in a spirit, not a machine. Machines have no spirit. They have no life. That's why AI is a sham. It won't be creative. You know why? Because it can't feel pain. It can only do imitations of creativity. It can't feel pain. It can't experience loss the way a human being can. I mean, at least not yet. I don't know. I don't know how we're going to put that into a machine when we don't even understand how it works in us. I mean, come on. I think artificial intelligence is a very elaborate illusion. I think what the thing is, those Turing tests are faulty in that I think the robots are able to fool us long before they actually become self-conscious. I mean, they can fool us you can be fooled into thinking you're talking to a human when it's just a robot, even though the robot is really just a robot. It only has the intent that it's given, or that it manifests from its just random, like, let's let it teach itself something or whatever. And so it comes up with its own ideas. But they're not motivated on anything based on passion or love or caring about anything. It's just based on algorithmic. Anyways. So, spirit is so important. That's the thing. The spirit of this world, the spirit of the devil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the spirit which worketh in the children of disobedience, manifests these works of the, Paul says it's the flesh. There's something weak about the body, but I don't know that it's entirely to blame, because the flesh can be, we can subject our flesh. Paul talks, I keep under my body. It is weak, but it can be brought into subjection, to a degree. It's not this uncontrollable thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't tell you, well, hey, I mean, you look at this list, and he says, it's interesting because they talk about Galatians as if, in all these books of Paul, as if Paul teaches that you can do whatever you want. It's like, he says, like this chapter 6, my favorite part I read there, in light of everything we've been talking about, is, be not deceived. God is not mocked. Whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Don't be a fool. Do not mock God. Do not take, I'll serve you, Jesus. No, I won't. Cross my fingers. It's so like the idea that, you're still saved. I want to take a pastor like that by his lapels and slap the living daylights out of him, quite frankly. It makes me feel violent in my heart. Lord, forgive me. I'm a man of violence. A man of violence. Committed to peace. Now, I grew up racist and violent, but I reject both things, because they're wrong. And it's the flesh. You know why? Here's the thing. You know why wrath is of the flesh? Doesn't God have wrath? I don't really think he does. Not really. Wrath is like, because the flesh understands wrath. And maybe this is cockamamie. Feel free to leave a comment below. It's like, this is not meant to be dogmatic. Here's my thought. It says we should not be angry. Here's one of the things people would criticize about God. Like, there are various anthropomorphisms about God. God's sitting on his throne. And, I remember one time an atheist asked me, do you think he's got his literal, I'm going to just say it, his little butt, this is less profane, his little butt on a literal seat somewhere, sitting on the throne? I mean, don't you think that means he just reigns over everything? I'm like, well, yeah, I do. I don't think that means, like when I say God is on the throne, I don't mean like this moment he is literally seated somewhere, though he might be seated. I don't know. It's like in this moment, I don't think of God in terms of him dwelling in a moment. I dwell in this moment. God dwells in eternity. It's like, so, and also the idea of anger. When I get angry, it's usually because circumstances cause me to lose patience, or I'm surprised, and then I become overwhelmed with a feeling in my flesh, like it makes me feel angry and wrath. And wrath is often, at least we'll look into it here, but I think of wrath as not just anger, but that expression of anger. Like I can feel anger, but I express wrath. I don't know if that's right, but my point is, like, obviously it says be angry and sin not. The feeling of anger can be, like I talk about Jesus feeling like he didn't want to go to the cross. That's an okay feeling to have. If there be another way, he submitted completely to the will of the Father. He was committed to it, but you can be committed and still feel like, I don't think so. I don't really. Is there another way? Hey, I can ask this. Can I? That's why he did that, so we could not be afraid. We would not be afraid to ask him anything. You know what I mean? Even something we think maybe is not his will. Maybe it's not. If I want your will, Lord, but I think this would be better. So I'm going to ask it. And I think Gethsemane is the open door for that, and it's beautiful. Because God appears in flesh and he gives us this great gift of like his humble death. But, there's other thing. If you led of the Spirit, you're not in the law, because you're led by a Spirit, which is the Spirit of Christ, which is the Spirit that gave the law. And he is guiding you, like when they were going through the corn and picking it, or when he healed on the Sabbath day. If the Spirit tells you to do something that's technically against, it's like you do it. You say, which of you would not take your ass out of a ditch if it fell in there on the Sabbath day? So the law is this guy, I always tell my kids, it's like, you don't always follow the rules. You know what I mean? It's like, sometimes you look around and say, why is everyone still doing this? And hightail it out of there. You don't just line up and get into the boxcars like a good little victim. Not necessarily. Jesus didn't just line up to get crucified from the beginning. It was at the appointed time. They wanted to kill him many other times. And you know what? He escaped. He got it. There's all kinds. I always joke about when we do the Gospels about he skedaddles. He gets out of there. He scarpers. He's off. He legs it. And they're like, where the heck did he go? I think he did more than just, he probably did a little blip, He did a little divine mind trick or something where they just, a lot of that, who knows how much of what anything, what they saw on the Mount of Transfiguration. Jesus is just sitting there watching them, and they're like, like literally, how do you know that isn't it's all just, he's making them have a vision. Because that's all they say. We saw him have this happen. The whole translating everything into an actual presumed historic event. Not a lot, I do assume many of them to be, what Paul's talking about in this book of Galatians is historic. There was the people came. It's like, it depends on what you're looking at. When you're looking at something that is an obvious parable, to be treated as such. Okay. I want to go off the subject. All right, but see, but it's also being part of the letter of the Spirit. There's decisions to be made. You got to know when to zig and when to zag. You got to know when things are symbolic and when they're literal. When we're talking about metaphorical or not metaphorical, there's a difference. And you can't just leave it up to, and here's the point. A lot of the more bizarre doctrines people believe in, like eternal torture, I think are the byproduct of people just accepting decisions that were made about metaphor versus literal, like I said about death and torment in the book of Revelation. So it's interesting to me because they say death is just figurative. It's spiritual. It's not real. You don't die. There's no such thing as death. You're tortured forever. You have eternal life in a state of torment. That's what death really is. I mean, that's funny because I think that eternal torment thing, it really is like the second death where you're dead. But the torment is like a metaphor for how those who continue to live forever continually remember and the instruction that is gained. You know, it's like taking it out to the grindstone and extracting the information. That well will never run dry. The well of wisdom, which I will extract from the death of the wicked. That, you know, I mean, you're not told like, oh, that's actually an either or proposition that exists, because you can't have it both ways. It's one or the other. But they act like it's all one way. They just decided that. I just get sick and tired of all this. You know, it's like they take the Rorschach test and they see dark things. And it makes me think, what's wrong with your mind? What's wrong with the spirit that dwells in you, that you see such things? Anyways, why would I think God is sort of incapable of wrath? They anthropomorphize him. Does God really, is there anything to surprise God? You know what I mean? No. I do think that God puts, because here's the thing. Here's what I got. All things from the beginning of the world were made by him and are unfolding according to his plan. Nothing the devil did has disrupted God's plan. God's plan from the beginning involved the devil. You can tell because the devil is present in the garden. Not that they're in confidence with one another, but the devil does what the devil does because he's the devil. He was created that way. Just like all the evil men in the world do what they do because they're evil. It's like, I'm also flawed. I do what I do. You know, it's like, I don't know. People say, why does God allow so many evil people into the world? Well, you know, where's he going to draw the line? You know, how? Well, some people are capable of such evil. Maybe they shouldn't be born. You know, we should find out genetically where the criminal tendencies are and abort those babies. You know, they do that. They look into that. They study that. You know, it's like, yeah, but just because someone's capable of something, that doesn't mean they're going to do it. Maybe people who are capable of great evil are also capable of great good, and that there's something to be redeemed from them. Maybe that's what God sees in us. That is what he sees. That's what I believe he sees in us. And so from the beginning, evil was part of the purpose, because the purpose is to redeem evil people capable of evil, disobedient and such. Not, you know, righteous people have no need of a savior. Have no need of this, the trial of this world, if you will. You know, I'm flawed, so I need help. The works of the flesh. These are the manifest things that come forth of that, the good and evil. The knowledge of good and evil puts all these questions in our mind. You know, it makes everything hey, there's this and there's that. Adultery, you know, I've got a wife, but this girl's a lot prettier and younger. You know, maybe I'd like a new wife, you know. In the New Testament, one of the reasons Jesus was very adamant about divorce was because under the law, and to this day, as far as I know, in the rabbinic law, you can divorce your wife for any reason, including if you happen to find another woman more attractive. As long as you divorce her, you have not sinned. See, that's what I'm saying. They know it's no sin. And see, some people think that's the way the law applies in regards to slavery. Also, it's no sin because it's in the Bible. It's like you have no understanding. People don't understand. They can't read or something, or the Spirit isn't with them. So, you know, it's like people void of the Spirit can't understand. You know, what's interesting to me, see how many denominations have been founded based on people who are void of the Spirit and never really understood the Scriptures. You know, it's like amazing. It's like they're bound, like the Catholic Church. They have the Bible, but they're bound by their structure and their traditions and the power of the press of men. All that press of flesh, of men, of didn't he say something about that? Oh yeah, all those men desirous of vainglory. That's what the churches are filled with. Men desirous of vainglory, provoking each other. I find them quite provocative, but I don't envy them. And that's what I mean. Should I get angry? Why shouldn't I be angry? Why should, when men do great evil, why should I be chill? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at. Because if God knows everything from the beginning, and he created everything from the beginning, this is what I've been getting at. He created the good and the evil. He brought men into being. He allowed Satan into the garden, at the very least. He created Satan. He planted that tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which God planted it. Let the devil in, so it's all according to plan. That this is all going to happen. All the bad things that happen to us are part of his plan, is what I'm saying. He knows this is all coming. So how can he get angry about anything? And Paul asked the same question, and I answered it a million times, but you remember in Romans, if no one has resisted his will, because God has elected how the world is going to be and what the end is from the beginning. If God hasn't, if you believe still free will is what's, how could there be a book of Revelation if free will is what's determining everything? If we could yet surprise him a bit. Oh, didn't expect that. Got to compensate. Got to compensate for some weird thing that happened. God is constantly trying to make up for, he's like that little boy with his finger in the dike. Except he's got 1 billion fingers and 1 billion holes. And that's an understatement. That's not how the world really works. You're a slave to your own. It's like you can't do what you want. You don't even have a free will. Here's a funny thing. These preachers will preach free will. And I don't deny that I have my will. And I do what I want. But I'm not free. There are times I would like to be a different man. Certainly in certain aspects. There's things about myself from my youth I wish I could change, but I can't do a thing about them. I can't add a single little cubit to my stature. I can't add a millimeter to my stature. Or any fraction of a millimeter. Best I could do is I could shave off the bottoms of my feet to make myself shorter. That's about it. And then have it grow back. Or maybe I could callus them up and gain. Yeah, I could, whatever, that's silly. God knows the end from the beginning. Why would he ever get angry at anything? Right? It's all his plan. Why does he yet find fault? Or why does he find fault for who has resisted his will? And why is he so angry? He planned it all from the beginning. And I guess, and I get, that question is not often asked because most people don't believe in predestination. I assume Calvinists hear it. And my response to that is like, he isn't really angry. No, because God's patient. Is he infinitely patient? No, I don't think he has enough patience for whatever. But the point is he doesn't put up with things he doesn't like forever. Because it's like, no, this is all temporary. The infinite can't be filled with, with evil. The infinite, and going beyond. Evil will be contained in this little thing which will fade away into nothingness almost. Not quite nothingness. Because like I said, it will be tormented forever and ever. They will be, if you will. Oh, that's fine. Because I take that metaphorically, symbolically, spiritually. I'm not sure which one that is. I think it's probably spiritually or a little bit of both. Or maybe a little bit of all three. Whatever death is supposed to really be to everyone who believes otherwise. And what is death really? A construct? An imaginary thing? A boogeyman? What is it? Because they don't believe in it. Not really. Death is an illusion. When someone dies, that's just their husk. They are just standing there and they're looking at, they're headed off to heaven or hell or whatever, but their spirits have moved on. That's what people believe. I don't. So why would God be angry? I think when God in the Old Testament prophets talks about that, when it says he pours out his wrath, it means that which is appointed to those who do these things. It is called wrath because we understand what wrath is. It's when we get really angry about something because maybe it's wrong or offends us or whatever, or we think whatever. We hate it. We want it done. So we destroy it or whatever, or we get rid of it, whatever we do with it. Wrath. We know that feeling. And God says, well, okay, these things are appointed to my wrath. This and this and this and this. But the infinite God does not get overwhelmed with emotions. Maybe when he was a man as Jesus, yes, he was touched with all of our feelings. And I don't think the Father has no feelings. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how can an infinite God be overwhelmed or surprised with anything? And I would say no. And that it's an anthropomorphism. God does not fly off the handle at the surprise of some circumstances and, like he didn't account for something that was coming that he didn't see. It's an absurdity. You know what I mean? For the idea that he would be mad like a human. I mean, he had, like I said, there are things to which he says, these are the things I hate. Like my children, no one's ever done anything awful to my children, but I could think about it and say boy, that would make me mad. I can actually feel it a little. Right? And I'm sure God can feel it too. But what I'm saying is, in the moment, he doesn't just fling off in wrath. I don't think so. Well, I mean, he has appointed a day where he will, though. And as far as the man Jesus Christ, he has a body and he can feel it. So that's an interesting thing. And where he intersects with us, he certainly can feel it. I don't know to what degree after the incarnation and the ascension that Christ, he ascended and came to the throne of God, that he returned to that infinite mind. I don't know. That's all mysterious to me. It's so. Anyways, that's one that always bugged me because it's we're not supposed. Wrath is a work of the flesh. And I'm sure that it's going to be something like passion. Let's look that one up because that's what we've been talking about, and then we'll go over the other ones. Because I think that's an important one. Because it's one that I get angry. It says, be angry and sin not. You don't want to give place to the devil. What is going on here? Wrong Bible. Okay. Strong's King James Version. And here we are. We're going to probably do a lot of words today. Well, we're halfway through and we'll all be talking about wrath. But that's important. Well, because, because a lot of these is obviously wrong. And, it's how much can you say? Thumos. Heat. That's right. Heats. Fierceness, indignation, wrath. Fierce, passion, rage, anger. I did say passion. Not the word I knew it wasn't that word for experience or passion, the things Jesus went through, as we call passion, or emotional. I thought maybe emotional because thumos can mean emotional passion, as if breathing hard. In fact, I guess if I'm talking from my knowledge as a person who used Strong's Concordance for most of their life, actually I hit it on the head. Passion, as if breathing hard. Fierceness. I don't know why I'm hedging as though, Paul, I didn't quite get that one right. No, I hit it around the head. It's passion, but not in a sense of heat. And I don't think it means in the sense of. It seems like it's used only in that sense of fierceness, not in the sense of the way I might be passionate for my wife. Well, in the sense of or for any family member, in the sense of if someone tried to harm them, then that passion would translate to fierceness towards someone else. But anyways, but that's not what that word really means, I think. It means that passion, fierceness. In fact, notice Strong had said also indignation. Oh, I think it's translated indignation, actually. So, but that's the point. It's I remember Arnold Murray used to say, "Oh, well, righteous indignation." I agree. There is a. If you're thinking of it just in sort of indignation in English carries a little more of a under control kind of thing. It feels less like indignation. I think ooh, I'm indignant. I'm. This is an indignity, and I'm indignant about it. I'm not sure if those are related, and I'm going to write a very strongly worded letter. That's a very appropriate response to some things. I mean, obviously, it may not be to your family being raped. It may be, that's not the proper indignation. But in many cases where people, feel like they're justified in being angry, they overdo it. You know what I mean? We always feel justified in our anger. But Jesus said, be careful, because whoever's angry with his brother is in danger of the judgment. You know? And how you talk and how you speak to your brother, it's important. But also, it's like, you know, if your brother has someone against you, you're supposed to go to him and be reconciled. And fathers, provoke not your children to wrath. Wrath is often provoked. That's why I think in the Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, you know, that whosoever is angry with his brother, and then in the King James it says, without a cause, shall be in danger of the judgment. That without a cause, I think, is probably the most transparent addition ever made to the Bible. I think. I could be wrong. Because it just seems so rhetorically, not rhetorically, well, it's redundant. You know, it's like, well, the idea that someone would be angry with, oh, you're angry without a cause. I'm just angry with you. Rah, no reason. Like, wow, what a jerk. Like, ooh, that happens all the time, right? People just angry for no reason. I know it does happen actually with certain people. Some people are angry for no reason. But the idea to just throw this on them, it's just them. It's just the people who are angry for no reason. You know, you've got reasons. You've got good reasons to be angry, don't you? Yes, you've lost your patience and all this other thing, right? But the fruit of the Spirit is patience. We have all kinds of reasons to be angry. Again, and you know what? The feelings are not to be denied. Feel your feelings, but be careful about them, what you do with them, how you manifest them. That's always the message of the Scripture. And the key is to consult with the Spirit. Like, if you don't at least turn to God when you're in the emotional moment, you know what I mean? Like, you got to at least turn to him in prayer in a moment of temptation if you hope to have him help you escape. And I tell you, there have been moments when I did, and maybe I needed to keep at it or something, when I turned to him in prayer and I felt like, oh, he didn't help me. You know, but other times I did turn to him in prayer and he did. So it's sort of like, and it's not just like random, like, well, Paul, either one or the other, you know, no, I mean things where it was like, I really feel like God helped me, because it wasn't like, just whatever. It was subjectively true to me. It doesn't matter. You know, it's like everyone has their own experience on a certain level, especially when it comes to like the Lord delivering you out of certain circumstances and the way, you know, sometimes people are like, well, that's just a coincidence. It's like, yeah, there are coincidences and there are other things. There are other things too. And I don't mean just like things that are not coincidences. I mean, like I said, there are other things. It's like when the Lord gives you gives you some sort of sign, or gives you a word or a feeling, a particular direction. There can be ways in which he lets you know that go beyond coincidence. That's for sure. Anyways, but if we want to have any hope of escaping or that thing, we got to turn to him. I don't know what else to say, because if I don't turn to him, he doesn't usually like jump out of the clouds and go, "Hold on, Paul. What are you thinking there, buddy? I'd like to ask you to reconsider, fella." No, he doesn't do that. You know, he wants to help, but he doesn't want to babysit. You know, he already does it enough. I get it. Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. I take care of you enough. I've saved your rear end enough times, and I will continue to save it out of the worst. You got to take responsibility for some part of this, as far as like you're going to do it. I'm not doing everything for you. And it's then no different than a father would. You know, it's like, if I do everything for my kids, they're going to be spoiled. They're going to be weak. You know, in both things. God doesn't want spoiled, weak children, so he expects you to do some of it. Not to earn your salvation, but because you're his son. Now we're the sons of God. And it doesn't yet appear what we'll be, but we know that when he appears, we will be like him, like the song said, and it's going to say it at the end. We are the sons of God. It's the most beautiful thing. So these works of the flesh are not for us. So we dwelt on wrath for a long time here. We're not going to dwell on every one of these things. Adultery, obviously. Jesus, in his Sermon on the Mount, made it clear that adultery is not just when you actually physically go out and commit adultery, but when one even looks at a woman with lust. He's already committed adultery in his heart. Now, that's not the same magnitude of sin, but it's like what he's saying. It's like, yeah, you don't lie, but men shall give account of every idle word in the judgment, Jesus said. Every idle word they shall give account. And if men shall give account of every idle word, then yes, also for the lusts, also for their other things that are forbidden, their hatred, and all those things, these things, the works of the flesh, drunkenness. We'll get to that. Adultery, fornication, two kindred things. Obviously, adultery more of a betrayal. Fornication, though, is right down to the book of Revelation listed as one of the top ones. Not having any regard for commitment in sexual relationships, just laying with whoever. That is against nature and against God to be a fornicator. And it is against civilization. It's not good for human civilization. It results in women who don't have children because they seek birth control and abortions. And then they become old and they become worthless as mothers. They can't have children. Not everyone has to have children, but the problem is if too many people don't, society and civilization collapses and whatever. It's like, I don't want my grandchildren who are raised by my children, who are well raised and raising their children well. I don't want them to grow up in a collapsing civilization. But I don't have much choice since most of the people are doing the dumb thing and living their lives according to the flesh. They want to be fornicators. Why be tied down? Why be tied down in a marriage where you're going to want to commit adultery and get divorced, and then so you don't have to commit adultery? But Jesus says that's adultery. When you divorce your wife because you find some other woman attractive, that's adultery. That's what he said. So John the Baptist said too. They agreed on that. And one of the other things they agreed on was repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's like Paul says, you're going to reap what you sow. You think you can just believe in the story of Jesus and because you're a Christian, God's going to respect your person? No, he's not. It's like you stand by faith, by grace, through faith. Those are the important key things. You said you believed in Jesus. Haven't you heard of him? Well, let me tell you, Let me tell you. You need to learn, because obviously if people that don't, it just makes no sense to me. Uncleanness. Aselgia, no doubts. Let's see. Here's this. Uncleanness. Oh, no. Akatharsia. Aselgia is like something else. Is that like unholiness? I think it's impiety or something like that. I'll just bring it. Okay, this is a catharsia. I forgot this is like Catherine, like my wife's name, Catherine. Meaning pure. Akatharsia is unclean, though. Impure. Impurity, the quality of moral impurity. Now, it's interesting because there were impure things under the law. One of the things in the book of Acts, they said you should not do is drink blood. Now, some people would say, well, French onion soup has blood in it, or if your steak is raw, it's got blood. That's not drinking blood. I'm talking about drinking blood, man. I'm talking about you got a goblet with a goat's head on it, and you're drinking blood. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like blood drinking, like the heathen, because that's what it was all about. And you still shouldn't do that, yeah, because it's unclean, it's filthy. And so there's some things I'm like, and it's a matter of conscience to a certain point. I mean, I don't mean about the blood drinking. The blood drinking is strictly forbidden. Shouldn't drink blood. Certainly not human blood. It's disease. It's like that. There's something just sick and unclean, and it's also dangerous as far as disease. People who want to drink a lot of different people's blood. It's like fornication of another order. It's like something's gone wrong. It's like a lot of things. I feel sorry that that's the kink in your character, where it's like that's what you feel like you crave. I want to drink people's blood. Okay. But that would be an example of something that's unclean. That's a very unclean habit that needs to be ended. It's like you can't be a Christian and still pursue blood drinking. You can't be a Christian and pursue uncleanness. Now, everyone under the law would be unclean at some point, right? Like you go to the toilet, you're dirty, you're kind of unclean. There were certain things like women when they would menstruate, they were unclean. Now, in the New Testament, all that law is passed out of the way. But does that mean, one of the things women were supposed to do when they menstruate is to wash? Does that mean we should go around unwashed? The men should be filthy? You know what I mean? It's like there's a thing to also washing of the body. You don't need to wash obsessively, but the uncleanness of the flesh does do, I don't know to what degree it contributes to health. Obviously, there's like some debate about that. I don't know. I'm just thinking about the physical impurity aspect of it, because it was physical or moral impurity. Now, moral impurity would go down to the same thing. It's like you're going into, fornication is obviously a form of moral impurity, but there are lesser forms of moral impurity. And that's why he throws that in too. It's like adultery, fornication, uncleanness. What would uncleanness be? Like, hanging around a dirty magazine shop, maybe going to some place where there's strippers or dirty holes where people do things, or things like that. But still like short of actual fornication or something. I don't know. To me, it's like some of the unclean things people get up to, so just think that as a general term. The Spirit should be your guide. I mean, there's good old dirty. I go in the garden and get my hands dirty. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about in a moral sense. The physical dirtiness, well, yeah, like I said, if as much as it's possible, I like to maintain a clean appearance. I don't mean to point to my hair as if it's like some great example of like style today, but we can't live like pigs, that's for sure. We can't just give ourselves over to physical uncleanness. I mean, it's not like this thing we need to obsess about, but certainly caring for the body is something that Paul even talks about, that everyone should do, or it's natural to do. You care for your body. It's not that, that hard. That's why I feel like it's a weird thing to dwell on, so we won't. Let's move on. That more uncleanness in a spiritual sense of like the liking unclean things, liking to see things that are nasty or whatever. I don't know. Lasciviousness. What was aselgia? Wait, where did I have that? That was for... Oh! Remember I said aselgia before? That's lasciviousness. It is not impious. It is filthy lasciviousness. I remember, I forget if it was like somewhere in here where Strong, I'm going to see in a second. Does Strong call this licentiousness? Yes, that's hilarious. I was thinking it's funny when they define something that in the King James is lasciviousness. We usually say lasciviousness, like we ignore the C. And then licentiousness. Licentious, has that word license in it. Or like the licent, like license. It means like taking license, meaning, I can do whatever I want. I got license. I can do, and so that's license. I don't know if that's what licentiousness, though, often means sexually. I take license to do whatever I want because I don't need a marriage license to do those things, But in the Greek, it means this is more like sensuality, wantonness, sensual licentiousness in that very specific sense. Unlike when it talks about how Eve was seduced by the serpent, where it's a word that could mean deceive in many ways, like trick, not at all, suggestive. This is suggestive. It means sexual wantonness, it means the desire for those things, being, looking, it's not just like looking at pornography could be a form of lasciviousness, right? But also the sort of wolfish pursuit, even short of fornication. You know what I mean? Like, hey, baby, that kind of stuff or whatever. I never walked that road very, not very far down the road. It's like I took a step or two down in my youth, and that's about it. Never saw where it takes you. Just because, never got to be the fornicator. Never got to be the fornicator I wanted to be. Let me put it that way. I was more like most people, serial fornicator. You have your girlfriend for a while, and you're kind of faithful to her, kind of faithful. At least that was me, But, no one taught me right. I was only told to stay away from women, which was not possible. The next one is idolatry. That was one of the things they said, idolatry, in the book of Acts. It was eating things sacrificed to idols, which Paul sort of pulled the rug out from under, which I get. But idolatry, though, he would never pull the rug out from under. Because if eating the things sacrificed to the idol was in any way part of the idolatrous practice, it was forbidden. It was only when the idolatrous meat was sold to a general market and you had no idea whether it came from a temple or not, or maybe it probably did because you bought it in the Shambles, which is just on the edge of the temple district and is notable for having a lot of temple meat, but it's cheaper. So it's like, so it was sacrificed to an idol, but you're not participating in the sacrifice by eating it. It's like just being sold off. You're buying it, not for the benefit of, I don't know, whatever. Paul was like, it's one of those things of conscience. It's not strictly forbidden. Like if you eat the meat, it's not actually hurting you if you do it with a clean conscience. But it can be harmful to a brother who has a conscience of it. So you gotta be careful. It's because of idolatry. Because they may think the idol is something, as Paul said. To me, an idol is nothing. That was his point. So the prohibition on eating things sacrificed to idols is really a prohibition pointed at idolatry. It's not about the food you eat. It's about participating in idolatrous practices. Same thing with the drinking blood. It was not just that, notice they didn't say, they've got to eat kosher meat, which is drained of the blood very thoroughly and this and that, and they can't eat organs. No, it was just no drinking blood. They didn't say no liver, because they weren't allowed to eat it. They didn't say no hindquarters. I don't even understand that part, but whatever. Witchcraft. Witchcraft being sort of on an idolatry thing, sort of a practitioner of some other religion, basically. And that's, I would not, see, the thing is like, you're a practitioner of another religion, but which religion? It's not just any religion. Because like I said, you look at when Jesus came to the earth, who did he go to? He went to his own, but he also went to one other group of people. He went to them specifically, the Samaritans. And they didn't worship God correctly according to the Old Testament. But of course, according to God, the Jews didn't worship him properly. That's why Jesus went to the Samaritans and preached to them, and they received him. Though they weren't his people, yet they sought him. And though they sought him ignorantly and wrongly, you read in John what he said to them. He came to them, and the Jews hated them. They were shocked. The Samaritans to this day are Christians. And I'm telling you, that's a message. All these religion, when you're talking, I know violent jihadis and people who believe in they got the Quran, but a lot of these people don't ever read their Qurans, just like a lot of people who don't read their Bibles, okay? And a lot of them are basically good folks just trying to eke out a living. They love their children. They love their families. They don't want to die for anybody or anything except they're surrounded by their families, Most of those people are like that. They are not practitioners of Mohammedanism. They are just trying to be good under the umbrella of the religion that has captured their district. It's like, when you had to be Catholic, in 10th century France, you were Catholic. And later on, it was even more so you were Catholic. If you're a Huguenot, you can count on persecution. So anyways, I'd be very careful, like I said, just taking people who are part of a whole religion and classifying them. Like I said, Cornelius, I don't think he was practicing Judaism, but he was practicing love your neighbor as yourself. And he was practicing fearing God in the way he lived out his life. And then the gospel was preached to him and he received it. It's the perfect open door. That's why we shouldn't be killing people like that. And I'm glad that our country no longer represents like a Christian nation, though the nation is still a Christian nation, the people, though the government is not. The government is run by a bunch of atheists and the deep state. It's just the established government. You see, the president doesn't have the power to tell them what to do. He can try, he can flail about, but obviously they're the ones in power. Well, that makes me feel kind of better. Because it's sort of like we can't stop this. Well, I mean, as far as we have no power to do anything immediately, not by electing someone. So, what shall be done? Well, we'll get to it. Whenever I discuss my true plans, I like to turn off all my devices and walk out into the cornfield. And discuss with my conspirators things far from prying ears. Far from the government's prying ears. Anyways. I just not. Yeah, but there's only thing in that just is, well, what is my plan? Well, we'll see. Idolatry, witchcraft. Again, let's look at that word, though. Because people say, is that Wicca? Was Wicca qualify? What is wrong with witchcraft, and specifically modern witchcraft? Again, it seeks to manipulate people through the casting of spells. To try to, cause someone to fall in love with me, or try to get better luck against someone through manipulating magical things, or revenge, or any of that. A lot of them do it they call it white. They're like, what is this white? It's like trying to access powers that are not of God, and to sort of bypass, purposefully, especially in a Christian culture, to bypass that. I would say is one thing you could say for the Muslims. They say, we worship the same God you do. And we're like, no, you don't. That's what I'm saying. It's like, we're in danger of being like the Jews. And Jesus is like, you know what? These people don't worship me properly. They think I'm not even God, the Muslims. But these Christians, they don't worship me properly either. So what am I going to do? How shall I judge them? Like I say, I told these people to turn the other cheek. These people, I never talked to them about that. And their prophet told them, don't fight. So what's your excuse, Christian? I don't know. I wouldn't know how to answer, because there's certain circumstances under which I'm pretty sure I would fight. I think I would. Or maybe I decide, no, it's time to die. Well, or to die, or the Holy, like the three Hebrew children say, okay, I'm going to go into the fiery furnace, and either the Lord's going to deliver me or not, but no matter what, I'm not bowing before your image. That's all I know. I'm not going to play along with you. I'm not going to conform to the image that you want me to conform to. So, witchcraft is what? And we'll go a little late today because we started a lot early. Witchcraft. We will get to the works of the flesh. I'm not going to stop in the middle of this. And I'm not going to rush it. Pharmakia. Now again, pharmakia, right? Pharmacy. Right? That's where we get the word pharmacy from. That is certainly true. Sorcery, witchcraft. Again, you understand what we do mechanistically, or what, I've often defended pharmaceuticals, which is to me now unconscionable. I certainly think this, that people who are taking their medication, like their Lipitors and all this stuff, they're doing it in good faith. You're not taking your pharmaceuticals as any sort of defiance against God or black magic. Just like what a doctor does, it talks about physicians. Are physicians evil because it talks about physicians? No, old physicians were friggin', I'm sorry about using the slang, but whatever. They were like snake oil salesmen a lot of times. They were not reliable people. They were calling on devils to heal and all, just all this kind of stuff. And so sorcery and the use of chemicals for manipulating people, whether to heal them or all kinds, because there's all kinds of use for the for the apothecary or the pharmacy. Like one, the use of drugs, potions, and enchantments, poisoning. It means poisoning. By extension, the occult, witchcraft, by implication, remedy, the cure. So, this doesn't bear any resemblance, first of all, to Wicca, which is not about poisoning people. But I would say it is about using potions and such, perhaps drinking them or creating spells. And I don't know a whole lot about it. I've watched maybe 15 minutes of video once sometime, but it was as much as I thought. They cast their little spells, and they believe in, they're kind of white light type witches usually, where they're like, do what you will, but do no harm and that kind of stuff. Which is funny because it's like, yeah, well, that's a nice adage in a sense, but it's like, it depends on which is the priority. Which is prioritized. Doing my will or doing no harm. Because if I think like, well, my will preeminent, I may very handily overlook the unintended consequences that my will may bring upon people. But anyways, manipulating through the use of fake magical spells or actual pharmaceuticals to the end of like some sort of occult end. And like I say, oftentimes, like it's about the motivation. Now, not that I'm saying, well, here's the thing. Do I think someone playing some board game that's like Harry Potter themed, and it's got like a little Harry Potter, and you get your little spell card, and you go, okay, Harry Potter casts magic missile, and then, oh, the Dumbledore's here, and the I don't know much about. I know like those are two names, and then we got the bad guy. They don't want to say his name, whatever. It's a card game and a board game, and is that witchcraft? No, because there's no end. It's a pure, just not. It's nothing to do with it. To me, the true essence of witchcraft is about manipulating people and relationships. If your witchcraft doesn't involve that, you're just some sort of nature lover. It's like, well, then maybe, if you love God, if you fear God or act like you do, and you love righteousness between human beings, according to the love your neighbor as yourself, I pray Jesus have mercy on you. That's all I can say. And I think you should consider putting your faith in him. If you love right things, I don't know why you wouldn't. He's going to make the world right. It's only used twice in the New Testament. Notice the other one is in Revelation 18. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived, and in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. Properly drug-related sorcery, like the practice of magical arts. It's like, when someone was like, hey, you want to go down to South America to try ayahuasca with me and have this trippy experience where they see demons and stuff? I was like, you know what? I don't fear demons. I think I've said this before. I'm not afraid of demons. I've had experience with what seemed to be demonic. I think I've talked about this. Like, other people have similar experience, like, and they have some explanation for. I like how that happens every time I do that. People have had different experiences, but the one I had was very common. Sometimes they call it like the night hag or I forget what they call it. But literally, it was weird because I had a bunk bed, and I could see how this was all like. There doesn't have to be an actual thing in the room. It can all just happen to me through my muscles, but it's still real to me. Because I was sleeping, and I had a dream, and something started coming up my leg. And it was very sensual, and it was very feminine in the way it was touching me. It felt like it. It was right when I was first getting into the Word. And it came up my leg, and as it came up closer, as it got to my chest, it was coming up. I remember I just felt it coming up. I had a water bed. And it just, all of a sudden, I was just like, pushed down I hit the bottom of the waterbed, and this great weight was on my chest. And I immediately was like, ah, and I threw it out, and I sat bolt upright in bed, calling in the name of the Lord Jesus. And then I looked right. Well, no, actually, I sat bolt upright. I called on the name. I forgot the order. It was because I was 19. But I called on the name of Jesus, sat upright, and then there was this voice to the right of me that just laughed. I looked to the right of me, and it sounded but I think it was all in my head. I don't think it was in the room. Just I don't think anything actually pushed me down. I think my muscles went like this, and then it startled me awake. But it really happened. You know what I'm saying? It's I had this dream where this thing came up, and it made me do that. You know, it's when it talks about spirits throwing people in the fire and stuff, they do mess with you. I remember one time when I was a kid, my dad did this thing where he'd go like this. He'd go all right, Paul, relax your hand. Relax your hand. Okay, good. Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself. You know, right? I really did hit myself. But the point is, it's funny because that's kind of like what demons will do to you. They will make you hit yourself. You know what I mean? They don't need to do other things. They will manipulate you to throwing yourself in the fire, to giving yourself the bad treatment. All right. So witchcraft. Again, a lot of times they're using drugs to manipulate people. Is it people with drug problems? That's more to me under drunkenness, not witchcraft. Witchcraft are those, you know what witchcraft is? Giving alcohol to an underage kid. That's witchcraft. All right? You know, giving cigarettes to younger kids, getting them addicted, that's witchcraft. Using drugs to get people, or, I know people use drugs on younger kids to get them to have sex with them, offer them drugs to get, come over, have some drug, we'll get high, and now all of a sudden they get, hey, take your clothes off, lady. That is much more under that category of witchcraft. Hey, let's get her drunk, right? Yeah, you use witchcraft. She'll be ready. She'll be willing to do what we want once we get her drunk, or once we get her drugged up. So watch. Don't accept drinks from strangers, ladies. Especially when you go places you shouldn't be. And they give you a little, and we've heard plenty of it. They slip a little something in their drink, or they'll say, "Try this," and you don't even know what it is. Are you foolish enough to do it? Some are. Because people, a lot of parents don't teach their kids anything. And they're vulnerable. Don't leave your kids vulnerable. Talk to them about dangerous things. All right. All right, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the other page. So witchcraft, hatred. I'm going to look that up. Like I said, this study may go a whole half hour long, because I started early today. I've got lots of time. I got to go somewhere, but the main thing was to start early so I'd have plenty of time for it, and I do. Where is it? Okay, here we go. Sorry. I'm going to bring up the next several words here. All right. I'm sorry. I'm just going to bring it along so you can see why I'm mumbling into the microphone instead of bringing everything up right there. Hatred, variance, emulations. We did wrath, strife, seditions. All right, let's go through these words. Seditions, heresies. All right, we'll see about envyings. Echthra. Well, maybe. Echthra, enmity or hatred. Hostility, being hostile. Hostility. Now, that's another thing. It's here's the thing. Plural, this is interesting. It's feminine of that word, which means enemies. Feminine of ekthros, hostility, implication, a reason for opposition. Enmity. Like it said when Jesus had slain the enmity between Jew and Gentile, because there was an enmity there created by, the favorableness towards the Jews Made the Jews feel exalted. That creates a conflict between Jews and non-Jews. That's going on to this day. But it was supposed to have been slain by his sacrifice. That he put to death that enmity. In the church, it is slain. It's gone. There's neither Jew nor Greek. So what does he mean by hostility? Is there no place for hostility? I mean, we have the enemy, which is Satan. Are we allowed to have enemies? Well, I look at it like this. When I see this hostility, ekthros, what does it mean? Because there is, the Lord says himself this. Because people want to say there's no place for hate. That is not a good thought. But on a certain level, yes, though, I will say. But here's the thing. I would say it's not for us to hate. That is for sure. It's one of the things the Lord says in the Old Testament. Verse 5 of Psalm 11, the Lord trieth the righteous, but the wicked and him that loveth violence his soul hateth. Now, you could say the same thing, the works of the flesh. God hates the works of the flesh. That's why Paul is very clear in saying that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. And we talked about this, how we also may do some of these things and still inherit, but it's because the righteousness of Christ has been imputed to us. We are forgiven. But we can't continue in those things because we're his sons. We can't do that. This is pretty heavy duty stuff. Now, some of this stuff, it's like, yeah, you can be guilty of it, but once you see the truth, you got to correct it. Hatred. I washed my hair a lot last night, but it's itching right now. And I've been doing all this demolition. It's just making my eyes itch. So, I hate it. Like when I hear about a child getting molested or hurt, right? Everyone hates that, right? Everyone thinks of that verse where Jesus said, whoever offends one of these little ones, it would be good for him, or not it would be good for him, but it would be better for him if he had a millstone hung around his neck and he was cast into the sea. Sorry. Right? And, sure, and then people say, oh, I hate the child molesters. And everyone's like, hey, careful. It's like, because while I understand, anyone who does anything like that, yeah, how can you not hit the brakes? You know what I mean? It's like, I wouldn't say that that people who are capable of that, I don't think they're irredeemable. But I think that once you go down it and once you've done that, it becomes very hard to go back. You know what I mean? And so, but I'm saying, but like that act, I hate that act. I hate that it exists. I hate that people do it. I hate that they find it tempting. There's a lot of hatred there. And I think it's well placed. I hate murder. I hate when people murder parts of their family and take someone's money. I hate all those things that, I hate those things that God hates, which is those things which are prohibited by law. There's a place for hate. Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. And in fact, you can see that right here. Wrong one, Paul. Look right here. This is very interesting. Look at the usages of hatred. One of the ones we see here. Oh, it is the feminine. The enmity. Here they slew in his flesh the enmity between the law, because of the law. Extos. This is probably the masculine. Yeah, this is the related masculine word, and yeah, it's way too many times. I was thinking of the one in Romans where it said, no, while we were enemies, we were reconciled. Enemies for sake, whatever. It's not the same word as Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. But same concept, so it doesn't matter. It's not, because that word means it's like the opposite of love, hate, whereas this means one who is my enemy. Okay, so I want to get to this. What does that mean, though? So there's a place for hatred that should not allow you should not be allowing give way to wrath, but you reserve, like these things are hated. This is, I hate drunkenness. I do. I hate the works of the flesh. And of course, obviously, is it hatred for people? I would say that's a good start. But on what basis? I would say hating people categorically is definitely a sin. Meaning a lot of the hatred that was known at that time would be like, well, the Jews hate the Samaritans, the Jews hate the Romans hate the Jews, or whatever. Everybody, we hate that group. We hate them. Hatred. Like, I hate all Catholics. And I don't. But that's hatred. I hate Catholics. And you don't have to necessarily say it, but you could harbor it. If I think they're wrong, I should have pity. Maybe they don't like that. Maybe I don't throw that in their face. But I should pity my enemies. Like Jesus said, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. They're blind. That ultimately should be my attitude towards my enemies, is like I feel sorry for them. I mean, as they're hurting me, it's really hard to pity them. But then I take the long view. Like I said, why would God be angry? Why would I be angry? God's going to really make them pay for it. And if not, then I'm going to be what they're doing to me is going to transform them. And I'll be the powerful thing to transform them into something that pleases God. If they're not going to be destroyed for this, then this is going to be a transformative experience. Then at least my death won't be for nothing. We have to avoid, we don't want to hate people. I don't want to say without a cause, but just hate individuals. They say love the sinner, hate the sin, right? And just like when it says he hates the wicked, it's like he also loves the wicked, because some of the wicked he has, but those ultimately who live wicked lives and don't turn towards God and aren't turned towards God or the gospel, he does indeed hate, because he throws them in like a fire. And he rewards them according to their works. And as Paul says, quite frankly, they which do such things will not inherit. Will not. They will not be sons of God. The sons of God don't do those things. The sons of God manifest the fruit of the Spirit. All right, we're going to actually just finish verse 20, and then we are going to spend, I said we weren't going to spend 2 studies on this, but we'll spend 2 and 3 if we have to, because it is quite packed. I don't want to rush it. That would be, in fact, since I decided it's 2, maybe I'll kick off. Nah, we only got strife, seditions, heresies, right? Oh, no, we got variance. You know what we're going to do? We already did wrath, so we're going to pick it up with strife. All right, so let's go through variance and emulations, and then we'll be done for today. Variations. Variance. I believe this is, or is this strife? Oh, let's just do this again. Hold on. All right, here we go. Let's go back and let's see. All right, we only have 2 more words to examine for this study, which are variance and emulations. And I hope I made that clear. Hatred, you can't categorically hate people. Like, I hate Jews. That's terrible. No, you don't say that. I mean, I said it, but you don't think like that, which I don't. You don't hate categories of people unless it's categories of like, I hate murder. And those who do it, well, then there's like something else that goes there. It's like, it's like, well, careful, lest you also be judged. Because weren't you angry with your brother the other day? You better be careful in what you condemn. Oh, I hate all adulterers. I mean, I hate adultery too. But in my heart, I've been an adulterer. So I better be careful what kind of fire and brimstone I call down on them. I don't call down on anybody. It's like, except for those things where I feel perfectly clean. I'm like, those who corrupt the word, what? They should be, I feel very confident in certain areas and less so in others. All right. Variance. It is, what was after variance is emulations. Okay. That is Aries. It keeps throwing me off because it's a little different. And then emulations is zelos. Interesting. Because, I'll tell you what. Ares, it makes me think of wasn't there a Greek goddess, Eris of chaos or strife? something, contention, debate, strife, variance. Maybe it's a related word. So that means strife, quarrels, variance meaning differences. Having differences is not necessarily a bad thing. While I'm not a big diversity is our strength person, I am a big, certain kinds of diversity is just part of life. We all have differing gifts. You know what I mean? And so we need to make use of all of them. It's not to me so much a question of, we have diverse gifts, diverse talents. And those are the most, and those are not to divide us, but that every man may have his proper place. You know what I mean? But things like race and stuff, those aren't good reasons for hate, and they're not good. They're silly reasons to glory. Like to either glory in the deeds of your ancestors, or to be ashamed, or to be angry because of what happened to your ancestors, is just a big waste of energy. Because we're all here now. It's like all we can really. You can be angry and jealous of people who are born rich. I wasn't. I was born. In the world, I was born in America. That's like winning the lottery in the world. Like imagine if you've been born a child in Palestine in 2008. Wow. What a rotten time for you. So, most of the people in that country never got to vote for anybody. Because they're women. Because half of them are underage, and the other half of them are women. They deserve to be treated like terrorists. Because they want to defend their husbands and homes. Oh, God. And don't want them taken from them. Oh, well, what a bunch of terrorists. Are you ready to be labeled that way yourself? Like I said, judge not that you be not judged. Well, how much information did you have before you called people terrorists? How much information will they be required to have for you before you are called a terrorist? Oh, yeah. So, being quarrelsome. There's a place for debate. But sometimes there's quarreling for quarreling. Sometimes people are just, they're contentious. I've been accused of that a couple of times only because I was opposing Arnold Murray. But you're being contentious. It's like, no, because I feel obligated to do this. I don't do it anymore. I mostly ignore emails about it because it's like, I don't know how many more hundreds of emails they want me to write. But it's like, it's obvious. I'm going to do a study on that actually real soon. I recorded one, but I want to re-record it. Because I don't want to edit it. That's why I started doing live streams. Because it's like, well, I better get moving because no editing this. You got to keep it interesting the whole time. So this last word that's translated emulation is zelos or zelos. Or zelos, actually, that E. In most foreign languages, E is pronounced A. And that is so in Greek. So when you see a Z in the phonetic translation, it is probably ze. Zelos. Emulation. Now, I think of emulation as being a word similar to simulation. Emulation, the first time I ever encountered that word other than the Bible was when we had our emulators on our PCs back in the late 90s and we were playing Nintendo games on the computer. And it was a computer program that emulated the old video game system. It fooled the game into thinking it was on a console in front of a TV somewhere back in the 80s. So it was an emulator. And you see, that's why that makes me think of dissimulation almost. Like when Paul saw, they were carried away with the dissimulation. Emulation means to sort of pretend to be something. That's a lot like dissimulation. But this is nothing like that word that was translated dissimulation. So I don't think emulation is a good word here unless I don't understand what emulation means. I guess it can mean, maybe the idea is it can mean emulation in a neutral sense because emulation is neutral. In fact, most people don't even know what that word means. In fact, let's just get a Google definition. Emulator. They went right to emulator. No, I want emulation. That's so funny. They went right to the Video game definition. Emulator in computing. An emulator is a hardware software enabled. Thanks, I already said that. It means reproduce of the function or action of a different computer. I want the non-computing. Efforts to match or surpass a person or achievement, typically by imitation. To match or surpass someone by achievement. So it's kind of like a emulation. It's like I want to emulate my hero. I want to be like him and maybe be even, so they start to that. So dissimulation is more like hypocrisy. It's acting fake than it's emulation, at least in English. But the Greek word is zeal, which means heat. Like literally, properly, the root meaning is heat. And you can see that in the sense of like, oh, I'm really hot to be like my hero, Chuck Norris, so I'm going to go take karate classes. I'm going to be just like him. So zeal, the heat of zeal could be the cause of one to go in about emulating someone. But I don't think emulation, because, we seek to emulate Christ. I don't believe I can surpass him. In that sense, it would be more appropriate to emulate the saints, right? Because in a sense, and I don't think that that's entirely a bad thing when people like study the lives of saints. It can be very instructive. I certainly don't pray to saints because I don't think they can hear me. And I think that's a wasted prayer. Though God, like I said, people who pray these things, it's like, does God wink at their ignorance? Oftentimes he does. If he likes them, he sure does. And the Lord is very gracious. So I don't know. I'm not here to judge another man's servant. I'm just here to do my job competently and properly. So figuratively, in a favorable sense, ardor. Then that would be where emulation comes in. Like, I want to be. And then, or an unfavorable one, jealousy. As of a husband. Why is that negative? Why is my being jealous of my wife? Like, I want my relationship with her to surpass all other relationships with other men. I see no problem there. I have the desire, as it says, like to, what does it say? To surpass anyone else achieving a closer relationship with my wife. Obviously, I don't want to emulate, but the point is envy. I don't envy because she's mine. I don't understand how a husband can be jealous of his wife. That makes no sense, really. Well, because it doesn't mean that kind of jealousy. It's not unfavorable. It means more like this, ardor. Jealousy is when some other dude looks at your wife and says, I want to sleep with her. That's the negative sense. He tries to say, he's like, I'm going to get into bed with that guy's wife. That's jealousy. That's coveting someone else's wife. And the feeling a husband feels when his wife is cheating on him, and I may be putting passion into this that doesn't exist for me because I've never been cheated on, not by my wife, and I don't think by my girlfriend's really, well, a little bit, whatever. It was a teenager, she kissed another guy. Okay. I did worse. But my wife and I have been faithful. But, like, oh, I'm jealous because I don't want my wife sleeping with another guy? Or I want to prevent my wife from having a closer relationship with someone so I don't allow her to, like, just hang out with other guys? What are you, jealous? Well, I just want to hang out with my friend. So I find that stupid. Oh, he's jealous. I get it. He's jealous without a cause. Okay, that's more like delusional. You shouldn't be delusional. But as far as like, yeah, I don't let other people get close to my wife. Does that make me jealous? I don't let people talk to her. I don't let them get close to her. And she doesn't seek to be close with them. I get if your husband's jealous, I would say, like, why is he jealous? If he's being provoked to jealousy, is there a cause? Well, he doesn't want me to go out to eat with my old boyfriend. Your old boyfriend is the one who's jealous. He's the one who's trying to eat with another man's wife. He's trying to surpass. Oh, he's not trying. It's like, come on. Don't be naive. Even so, even if it is, it's totally appropriate. It's like, you know what? You're married now. You belong to someone else. I'm not a fan of that thinking. Like, husband and wife. My wife is also jealous of me, by the way. Always has been. Quite exceedingly so. And I don't fault her for it. Because it's never gone into the realm of delusional, maybe early on slightly. Slightly delusional, but it's like, it's gotten grounded in reality. The reality of my faithfulness. So there is like the word jealous. Now, envy, that would be a good, unfavorably of a husband, jealousy. Also used of God. Is it unfavorable of God when he's jealous? That's why I look at jealousy the way I do. Because I don't think it's again, notice they say it's an unfavorable use. I'm sorry, look at unfavorably of a husband, but also unfavorably of God. Because what else? See, I think they're wrong. And remember, this is just a translator. These scholars they're not sacred. So I'm free to disagree with them. I think they got that wrong. That kind of scholar, again, because it's about comprehension of the actual meaning of the words, which I don't give them credit for. I'll give them credit for their language understanding, but not for their understanding of humanity or of the scripture or of the righteousness of God. Because many of the translators are unfortunately void of the Spirit. All right, so again, if you want to be unfavorable, I would use the word envy of a man looking upon another man's wife unfavorably. Not of the husband. Like, again, a wife is at home quietly raising her children, going to market, doing her business. And the husband is jealous of what? He doesn't like when men talk to her. I get you can overdo that. You can be paranoid. All right, yes, and delusional. Like I said, you don't have to be paranoid and delusional about it. But on the other hand, you have to be, I would respond to any real threats. I'm very zealous over my children. I look at that like zeal, and I protect them. Like someone was hanging around, and I thought they were starting to be disrespectful to me while trying to get close to my kids. And I thought, you're never going to spend time with my kids again. Goodbye. And I cast them out. Because that's what you do. But I think I'm jealous after my children. I don't want anybody that I suspect of ill intent doing nothing, having nothing to do with them. No way. So this is not unfavorably of a husband. It's like, show me one example. Let's see. Let's see if they have one example of this being used of a husband in a negative sense in the Bible. I mean, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just totally wrong. They were filled with indignation. They were filled with envy. Well, there's envy. And I know that the crowds were filled with envy. Okay. Oh, you're not able to see this very well, but you will. This is the last word, but it's important. These, like I said, when you get bum translations, and it's not just the King James. All right, there, at least we got on the right side. So first we see in John, the zeal of thy house. Oh, that's in a negative sense because God is jealous. That's what I'm saying. What is the zeal? He has envy over it. He doesn't want it defiled. He doesn't want any other gods worshipped in his house. The Sadducees were filled with indignation at whatever was going on in Acts 5. This is probably when Peter was saying, well, we're going to preach what we got to preach. Or it was probably the resurrection or something like that. Because, again, in this version, they call it jealousy in the New American Standard. It could be envy. It could just be passion or heat. It could be that neutral sense. I don't know if it's envy. Probably not. Acts 15:17. If I go there, it's going to be all like, I don't know how to click on it properly. Having risen up, however, the high priest and all rose with him, being the sect of the Sadducees, were filled with jealousy. That's when they're meeting the high priest. And they were healed. Yeah, that's when Peter and them were healing because Jesus was risen from the dead, and they were forbidding them. Yeah, I'm going back a little bit. I'm not going to go there. We're going to do Acts soon, actually. We're going to go back to the Old Testament. We'll come back and do Acts. So there we go, jealousy. But still not a husband. They were filled with envy. Again, I'm not thinking that's a husband. The zeal of God, but they have the zeal of God, but not according to knowledge, right? In strife and envying, Romans 13. That's something we shouldn't do, envying. That's that aspect. I like the King James translator. Jealousy, sometimes jealousy is wrong. You shouldn't be jealous of other person's things and positions, and they're jealous. But he says be zealous after the greater gifts. I want to be a prophet. I want to be a teacher. It's not necessary. I mean, don't jump the gun. Don't, get the knowledge before you try to give it to others. I probably should have done that. But it'd be wise. You can take the hard way like I did, okay? You envying and strife among you. Again, that's not talking about husbands. Your fervent mind toward me. Again, that's more like zeal, not like husbands. Yea, what zeal, what zawing, what vengeance. Nope. Last year in your zeal has stirred up, blah, 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 with godly jealousy. I am jealous over you with godly jealousy. Oh, the first reference to a husband, but it's not negative. It's godly jealousy. Godly jealousy. Stupid. Sorry, I don't know. The more I live, the more I become like, I could see myself becoming, in many ways, I see Arnold Murray, like his angry, bitter preaching, that could become me. I won't become the same kind of person, but I could see some things. I could see myself ending up in a lot of similar places. But I'll try to do better. Debates, envyings, wrath. Again, is he talking about husbands? Not specifically. Here we are at the passage we're in. Philippians, concerning zeal, persecuting the church. Fire, indignation. If you have bitter envying and strife. Again, for where envy and strife are. So in the 16 occurrences, the only time it referred vaguely to jealousy of a husband was Paul talking about, I am jealous over you with godly jealousy because I have espoused you to one husband. That's not a negative jealousy. That is a positive jealousy. Like, I'm jealous over my daughter. I will not tolerate anyone except her future husband laying a finger on her. I'm jealous. I don't envy for my own sake. It's not envy, I want it for me. It's, I will protect it for what is good and right and for others. And I love my neighbor as myself. I'm looking out for someone in the future who isn't me. And for them. It's like when he espoused us to Christ. That envy is there to protect us and our relationship with Jesus for the future, for his sake and for our sake. It's a positive thing. The jealousy of a husband is a positive thing. It is never portrayed in that comical BS negative way that they do in sitcoms and other nonsense. It's unbiblical and it has nothing to do with the truth. And it makes it into the concordance, into the word help study. It kind of makes me want to puke. Like a jealous husband. Example. Where's an example once in the Greek? I know in Greek literature, it talks about goofy jealous husbands bumbling about the place. He's so silly, he's jealous. As she runs rings around him, he's such a doofus, her husband. It's disrespectful too. A man's instinct to protect his marriage should not be mocked. Certainly not by a bunch of pencil-necked translators. All right. Thanks for joining me. This one went long, but there's a lot of stuff to chew on here. And so it being early, hope we get a chance to listen to it. Until next time, remember the testimony of Jesus is a spirit of prophecy, and he is the fulfillment of the law. We are the sons of God.
Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear,